Please welcome Kevin Price.
All right, I got this. I'm difficult to deal with because I'll tend to move around and people will go, but everyone can hear me except for the mic. I'm very loud. So I'm a guy who could have a radio show without a tower. I'm very loud. But there's advantages to that. Not so many in my family of origin, but it helps when you're trying to be heard. And I tell you, when it comes to a topic like this, I think being heard is really important. I'm really excited about being here. It's a little different crowd, the messaging. I talk a lot about liberty, talk a lot about free enterprise. I talk about limited government. And it seems like the older I get, the more limited that government I talk about. But I'm excited about this because right now it kind of feels like, especially if you're out there, so many medical doctors are out there, and it feels very, very doomsday if you're out there. And what this organization is providing is a beacon for those doctors who really feel like, feel very hopeless. And I love this. People are wondering what this is for. You guys have been listening for hours, and I'm figuring that right about now, some of you will be dozing off. And so I will lightsaber you if that happens. No, what this is, though, there's a story behind it. To me, I even thought about this before I saw it. Yesterday, when I saw these come out, I had already thought about talking a little bit about the Star Wars analogy, because there's this dark force out there, and it really is government that is destroying the relationship between the doctor and the patient. And there's a quiet revolution taking place that's getting louder all the time. And that revolution isn't only driven by medical doctors. You've got to turn it off because you never know when Darth Vader might show up. It isn't only being driven by doctors who are frustrated and looking for a better way, but slowly but surely patients are expecting something different than what they're getting. They don't like the idea of 5 minutes being a long time with their doctor. They don't like the idea that all they're having is a treatment of symptoms, but never spending the time to figure out what exactly is wrong with them. And they're tired of the situation where it feels like the insurance company is the primary patient and not them. And so that's slowly happening. And, meanwhile, they continue to defer to doctors. The patients defer to doctors. I instantly fall into awe when I see the white jacket. I'm like, oh, this person's an authority. I'm okay now. So do other people. I'm not even a Dr. Seuss, so there's no PhD after my name or a doctor before my name. But there's this awe when it comes to the doctor. And so you who are the educated ones, you who are the professional ones, you continue, and I don't say you, those outside of these rooms, they continue to be compliant with a medical system that's about everything but the doctor and patient relationship. And that's the only reason why that relationship continues. Most people simply don't know that there's a better way. They simply don't know that there's another way of doing things. This old model now, the insurance model, that usurped the free market model that existed decades ago and worked relatively very, very well. In fact, it always worked well. The only time there was ever problems is when government regulations or government involvement became more and more pervasive. And sure, there's always exceptions. With everything, there's exceptions. You don't build policy around exceptions unless you want a lot of problems, which is what we have today. A lot of the situation we have today is because of decisions that were made, with Medicare and Medicaid paved the way for Obamacare. You would never have had Obamacare without Medicare and Medicaid, any more than we would never have what I think is in the works, a single-payer system. Obamacare was designed to get us closer to a single-payer system. And so, and I wrote extensively back in the 2008, 2007, that was the end goal, was a single-payer system. Hillary Clinton pursued that with passion in the early 90s. That they didn't understand the Hegel philosophy method of you got to have an antithesis that will work before you go for the touchdown. And the first step was government more involved, not government entirely involved. And now last week, or was it this week, when Aetna said, we're getting out of most of these government programs. Well, now eventually, there's going to be, from a functional perspective, only one, which will make it like a single payer type system. It was designed to fail from the very beginning. Obamacare was designed on purpose to fail. But what they've also done, and so it's failing. People are finding that they're paying 50% to 100 times more than they used to pay to go to a doctor. And how many of you seen the video clips of Barack Obama promising you can keep your doctor? And there's dozens and dozens of quotes like that. Only if you give up your health insurance will you be able to keep your doctor, is what we're finding out. And what we're hoping is that those doctors will unshackle themselves so that their patients can become unshackled, which is what free market medical is all about. And so, to me, it's an imperative that this movement become greatly about the patient, greatly about educating the patient, helping the patient understand the patient trusts you. And so there's a certain amount of discomfort, as a medical doctor, of getting political. Well, you didn't start this. They got political with you way before you got political with them. And you're not doing it in order to promote your agenda, but to promote the restoration of the relationship between doctor and patient that has been utterly obliterated by the political system we're living in now and continues to become so. It's crony capitalism at its height. It's about mega insurance companies that are too myopic, too short-sighted, too driven by greed to not even realize they were going to be thrown under the bus by the government when it became practical for them to do that. Well, that's already happening. That's why the Aetnas are saying, this doesn't work anymore. Don't worry, it was never meant to work. So I'm going to start with a story where when I was like 11 years old, we got a call, my family did. My mom is from England, so I was raised by a very liberal, progressive, statist father, and my mom was a labor, socialist Labor Party member, and so socialism ruled in my household. And very early on, I was kind of the black sheep of the family. It wasn't working. I kind of figured out early on there was problems with it. But when I was around 11 or 12, I can't even remember now, but we got a call from England that my grandfather had passed away in England. And what I found out later is that he passed away because the hospital had determined, thanks to government guidelines, that it didn't make economic sense for him to live any longer. So that's how socialized medicine works. It contains costs through rationing, and it rations by letting people die. Didn't make any economic sense. He was easily treatable, but he was in his 70s and hadn't paid taxes in God knows how long. He was nothing but a leech on society from the British healthcare model. That's what single payer looks like. You want what single payer looks like? Go to the veterans hospitals and see how we treat heroes who often wait months, sometimes even it sounds like years. And they actually have books on the side that talks about the real rates of mortality of these people as they wait for cancer treatments that they simply don't have the time to give them. So when they give that to our heroes, how are they going to treat schmoes like me? So for me, it gets very personal. And it was interesting because my mom lived under the delusion that, they did the best they could for my grandfather. She literally heard the exact same things I heard from my aunt, who said, no, they basically said he didn't need to live any longer. I mean, that's literally what he said. And so that's the kind of challenge we're facing today. And so for me, what I'm concerned about is that when I look at a conference like this, which I think is awesome, I kind of geek out because I've been libertarian for years. I'm an Austrian in my worldview and my philosophy of economics, have been for years. I kind of evolved. I evolved from a basic, in my household, I was always the oddball. I was kind of a three-legged stool conservative. Strong national defense, free markets, social conservative. But what I've seen over time, there's a great saying, a conservative is a liberal that's been mugged. That's a great saying. That's why most medical doctors are conservative, because they've been mugged. Well, I've created my own quote, an adage to that, which is a libertarian is a conservative who's figured out who's doing most of the mugging. And so we've been mugged by government. And increasingly I see government can do very, very few things well. And so we have to get people involved. And so one of the big challenges out there is that most people are under the assumption that at least when it comes to the media, talk radio leans to the right. Who would disagree with that? Talk radio, raise your hand if you disagree that it leans to the right. No one disagrees. Talk radio is generally very conservative. Yet, it could care less about what you're talking about. It could literally care less. So Dr. Geetender Goyal, why don't you raise your hand, stand up. We're going to have you talk a little bit near the end here because I want to get you some of your perspective about the engagement and some of the things you've seen. But Dr. Goyal approached me and began to educate me. He's a physician in the Houston area with Our Way Health, and he's really a foot soldier when it comes to free market healthcare. He doesn't merely wait for the practice to work. He came and engaged with me. I'm here today because of him. He engaged with me, educated me about how free market healthcare works. I was already advocating it. I really didn't know it existed. I was saying, honestly, Thomas Sowell said it best. If layers of spending or layers of bureaucracy are involved in anything, the cost of that thing goes up. Therefore, obviously, if you add government to healthcare, the cost of it's going to go up. The only way they're going to reduce the cost is through rationing, which people like my grandfather, who could easily be treated, are allowed to pass away because he's no longer contributing to the tax pool. That's the only way government healthcare works. It's the only way it can work. And so in the same way, though, eliminating layers reduces costs. And that's what free market healthcare is all about. And so, but the vast majority of your radio talk show hosts are pro-business. And they see insurance companies as a business. They just see it as a business, and therefore they're not inclined to go, they're not going to do the work to figure out what you're doing. They're going to sit there and talk about how we have the greatest healthcare system in the world. Yeah, if you can afford it, yeah, it is. Main reason why you can't afford it is because of insurance, because of government. They're not going to talk about that aspect, at least the insurance side. They don't get it. And so I encourage medical doctors to start engaging directly with those in the media. Start engaging directly with those who are really in the driver's seat to talk to millions of people out there when it comes to healthcare. I have seen very few, I've seen some, but I've seen very few interviews on a radio level. I've seen some on Fox and some on news networks, but very few on the radio network. Dr. Goyal and I have been bringing in some of the people in this room we've been bringing in to help educate the consumer about this, to educate others about this. Because what I want to see start happening is that people demand their doctors to move to a model like this. A lot of doctors in this room were using a system that didn't work, the broken system. Dr. Goyal calls it sick care, not health care. I'm sure others call it the same thing. It's sick care. You can't even see a doctor until you're sick, and by the time they see you in the amount of time allocated, it's only to treat whatever you're sick with. We're not going to actually get you better. It's like get our hopes due up. But he, has started a practice where people are now leaving the model, the broken model, to come to him. How many of you have a practice that's dramatically different than your practice 5 years ago? For those of you who are medical doctors, raise your hand high. Right. And so how many of you were using a model of you in that group were using a model in which the primary patient really felt like the insurance companies or the government? Yeah. I like the guy who said all of us, even because some of you didn't raise your hand. I'm not sure why. And so I would love to ask you, when these patients come, because a lot of your patients probably went on because you were no longer covering, dealing with their insurance, and therefore they couldn't do business with you. I'm sure that had to happen. Meanwhile, you got people who got tired of being perennially sick, and offered no hope of getting better, that as your practice grew, and as your practice grows, I would love for you to tell those new patients, hey, why don't you tell your doctor where you went and why? Now, that seems kind of contrarian or even lacking self-interest, but I disagree because they know who's the one that's been treating them, who's the one that offered them hope and opportunity and the possibility of being well versus the doctor that they had. But I don't think doctors really know. I don't think a lot of doctors really know that there's a better way and another way of doing things. And so educating the doctor is obviously very, very important, but educating the patient. See, I really believe that this movement, and I believe it's a movement, I believe this movement's growth is dependent entirely on patient buy-in. How many of you disagree with that? Dang, I thought we were going to have a debate. I think it would be a ridiculous debate because it's obvious. Yet, I know, because I have other friends, who are medical doctors who have moved into this model, they don't want to go there with their patient. How many of you feel comfortable having a conversation with your patient about why your model is different and why it's important to them? Awesome. How many of you actually had those conversations? Good. That's where it's going to begin. That's where the process begins. Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Goyle to come up for a little bit, and I want to have just a conversation with him on what his dealings has been and what he has seen. Come on up, Dr. Goyle. Dr. Geetender Goyle, he's with Our Way Health. This is his third time here? Second time here, that's right. And so I'm a complete newbie. Here you go. Take it. And talk a little bit about your background.
I'm an internist and a pulmonologist. I came back to do primary care because I believe we need to fix primary care before we fix anything else.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about how you got exposed to the free market model. And do you have a background ideologically or philosophically that's free market oriented?
I had no idea what free market is until about 3 years ago.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How many of you does that ring true with you? What percentage of you were familiar with Mises or Rothbard or any of these concepts that I'm hearing a lot of to my delight? I get goosebumps when I hear these other guys talk about Human Action by Mises, which is just a masterpiece. Everyone should read that book. Should be required reading. It's a masterpiece. And so I just geek out at places like this. So people only knew how much fun I'm having. It's terrible. But so you weren't. How many of you were free market in a philosophical way 5 years ago? Raise your hand. Okay. And specifically Austrian in your bent. Yeah, it gets fewer and fewer. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And what's awesome is that the motto promoted by the Austrian school, Mises and Company, Rothbard, and is that, and Hayek, what they were offering was a worldview that's built on morality. It's true that it has efficacy, it works, but it's built on morality. It's the right system. And so like Dr. Smith likes to say, the only one, it's always winners. In the free market, pure free market, is always winners. The only losers are the bad guys. And so we want them to lose anyway. So you weren't ideological. You're very pragmatic. You're just a medical doctor who just realized, just a medical doctor, spoken to a guy who really struggled through his undergraduate education. But you're just a medical doctor who's trying to treat patients. That's all you're trying to do. Talk a little bit about that. Yeah, give him that.
I've been wanting to hold this for a while.
Yes. I'm going to probably get rid of this and carry that around myself for a while.
See, there are a lot of doctors here, right? But we all are patients, right? We all gonna consume healthcare sooner or later, right? And our kids are gonna consume healthcare sooner or later. So when I was working in the ICUs, and I heard somebody else, our first speaker, the emergency room physician, right? When he's like, I really am at the front seat of seeing the disaster that's happening. And in a way, I felt like that when I was working in ICUs, taking care of those patients, our elderly, or sick of the sickest. what's the point of me being here trying to fix this when our system at the bottom is broken, right? So I was looking to find purpose to my life. Look, I've trained, I've become all this. I went to Yale to do my training, but now what, right? So that's when I started learning about direct primary care, what that movement is doing. And it was by chance I learned about Free Market Medical Association. It's a quick funny story. I bought a domain to start my own direct primary care practice, Upfront Health. And I get a call from Mindy, hey, one of the physicians in Oklahoma is looking for that domain name. Can he buy it? I said, why does he want to buy it? He wants to start a DPC practice. I said, okay, tell me more about him. And that's when I learned about Oklahoma and what Oklahoma is doing in the whole space of free market movement. I learned about Surgical Centers of Oklahoma. And, my life has changed since then. I was here last year. I learned a lot, and I am constantly learning from these guys. They've been great mentors for me. And second time here, I opened my own direct primary care practice. Yes, I'm not making money, but I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, that's right. And in the long run, he's going to make plenty of money because he's doing the right thing. I believe money follows the right thing. I honestly do. And so, but he is, he has become philosophically, I've seen even a philosophical shift in him because I've been a Mises guy for about 20 years. And so in the time I've known him, it's become more and more of, oh, this is a philosophical thing. This is an underpinning of what works versus what doesn't work. And I'm increasingly believing Mises was correct when he said there is no third way. There is no way between command economy and market that is going to work. There is no third way. And so I'm beginning to believe that more and more. I'm becoming weird with age. But, I'm slowly becoming an anarcho-capitalist, which when those words come out of my mouth actually send chills. It's like, oh, really? That's weird. But it's true because freedom does work. Liberty works. Freedom works. And getting government out of the way would be such a game changer. And it will be a game changer. And that's what I think is the irony of what's happening today is that it seems very, very, oh, my thing's still on. Sorry. So it seems very ominous. It seems very dark. But I think what's happening with Obamacare is paving the way for a free market. I really do. I really believe it's almost the 11th hour type of thing that's going to create the environment where a free market is going to explode. People don't want their life on this planet determined by bureaucrats. And they can see that slowly happening. They see that when they watch the news and they see how our veterans are treated. And they see, slowly but surely, they begin to see as insurance companies are failing and slowly but surely this dream system, this panacea is becoming a nightmare. They see that the doctor they used to have can't see him any longer. And they see that they're paying 50% and up to 100% more than they used to. And it's difficult for them to put the connections all together. It takes time. That's why I think you should play a bigger role. And they really don't care that much about you. I will tell you that. They're intimidated by you, but they don't care that much about you. They're more interested in reality TV, like the 2016 presidential election. That captures their attention. Not so much the policies that will come out of it, but the entertainment value along the way. And so, but they do care about their health care. They care about their children, like you mentioned, Dr. Goyle, that at some point are going to become users of that system. And what we'd like to do is see that happen rather than become used by the system, which is how it's set up today. So you and I got involved by you approaching me through a relationship through a Chamber of Commerce. And see, this is where networking, he's taking a very bold kind of networking approach, putting himself in a lot of different places in order to be poised to connect to people to be able to talk about this thing. And he and I have now done volumes of work together on this free market messaging. I didn't know it existed. Shame on me. It's not my profession. It's not what I do for a living. But I have great passion about it, both ideologically and practically, because I've seen how government healthcare kills people. It literally kills people. So talk a little bit about, it was through the chamber, correct?
It was through the Chamber of Commerce locally in Houston. But what I want to say is, I was looking to get the message out, right? How do I get the message out? And I didn't know what's going to work and what's not going to work, right? But we've had a relationship for over a year now, and some of the contacts, some of the content that we have built together, it's really nice. So the other doctors, DPC doctors, right? You are at the forefront of this movement. There are more every year. We see that, right? We see more every day, basically. But you still got to get out there and educate your patients, educate other doctors, educate the community about it. Because like Kevin is saying, if patients don't buy into it, we are wasting our time. And so I think it is important that we engage with people like Kevin. Not everybody in the media is going to understand what we're saying, right? But if you find a supporter who understands what we are doing, I think it's an invaluable relationship to have and get your voice out there and use it to educate the community.
Now, I want to give Dr. Goyle a hand. Thanks for helping. I appreciate it very much. So that kind of engagement, that kind of getting connected with people is absolutely crucial. And his point at the end is very important. When you talk to them, they'll say, yeah, I support insurance companies. I support every effort to try to keep it private. And it's like, really? Well, you're like working with the enemy itself, or you're supporting the enemy itself. It's all driven by crony capitalism. Insurance companies are the quintessential crony capitalists. And they're so naive not to realize that they're just going to be a speed bump towards a single-payer system. It's already happened. What we're developing, I love what was shared in the first session, is that once the ideology runs into reality, once the fantasy of liberalism, progressivism, runs into reality, and it becomes obvious it's not going to work, it becomes violent. It becomes violent. And that's why only doctors being interested in this thing isn't going to launch. I think. Of course, I'm not a doctor, nor have I played one on TV. Patients can buy into this. Media, if you sit down with them, there's a lot of guys like me who would love to be the clever guy who could talk about the truth. And you can get through the whole argument about, insurance companies are business, therefore I'm pro-business because I'm a conservative talk show host. You can get past that by using the expression crony capitalism. Crony capitalism. Conservative talk show hosts don't like crony capitalism. They'll beat up on Wall Street as much as anyone on MSNBC. You just don't happen to really fully embrace or understand how much Aetna and all those other companies that have their addresses in New York City are just like those Wall Street investment companies that get most of the ugly headlines out there. They're just like them. And so they have to be educated. Spend time with them. There are so many. How many of you personally know someone in the media? Raise your hand. I'm just curious. I'm gonna call it. Who would like to have a conversation besides Dr. Goyle? Thanks for being honest. I appreciate that. But who would like to have a real brief conversation? Everyone's been wanting to talk about this. I've been wanting to throw it the whole time. Who'd like to have a conversation with me about it? Okay, let's see if I can do it without hurting anybody. Watch that water. So yeah, and look at that. Right. Okay. First of all, go ahead and say your name. I'd like to know who I'm talking to.
Alex Lubarsky.
Thank you. And tell us, who do you know in the media? And have you engaged with that person about it?
Well, I have a marketing company. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I promote third-party independent physicians, and I work with some of the media in New York.
Okay. And so what are you doing to educate the media itself? What kind of interplay have you had when it comes to promoting free market?
Well, I find that media is tricky. Some media that's interested in these kind of things will be open to it. But for the most part, hospital systems have a lot of dollars, and they're spending a lot of it in the media to promote themselves. So for me personally, I found a couple of three that are open to discussion. But for the most part, I've had a really challenging time to try to get into the media, to introduce them to these concepts, to introduce them to some of the physicians that I work with. So I didn't give up on them, but I think it's an uphill battle because talk about perverse incentives I think in the media, a lot of that is going on from where I sit.
Right, so you're saying that there's kind of a problem with the fact that even how the media gets funded. They're getting funded, they're getting bankrolled, if you will, by the very hand that you kind of want them to bite, if you will. That being the insurance company.
Well, when I first started, I was much more naive. I'm still naive, but much more before.
Wasn't it nice to be naive?
I liked it.
I miss naivete.
It's like living in Disneyland. But
I do.
Eventually, I learned. So when I first started, I said this concept of the entire system is focused on disease care. We're spending $3 trillion. It's unsustainable. This was 15 years ago when I first started doing this. So I started reaching out to media a little bit more aggressively. And I was really surprised that they didn't embrace these ideas on any level. They had absolutely no interest in it, and I just didn't understand why. Now, 13 years later, it's become a little more clear why that is.
Yeah. Solomon said that knowledge is grief, and I'm with Solomon on that one. Increasingly, I think of what's the movie? See, I'm like a bad game show, and I had a pill you could choose. And one would reveal the truth, and the other one, what was that? Matrix. Thank you very much. Yeah, next year I'll be hiding my own Easter eggs. But anyway, increasingly now, I think I'd probably take the pill that let me live with, whatever that nasty meat was that tasted like steak. I don't know what that old deal is, but it's rough because we live in a fantasy world, especially in the United States, where we take such great pride in our individuality and our beliefs in liberty and that type of thing. It's such a sham. It really is such a sham. Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback. Another doctor, thank you. Another doctor who's engaged with the media who'd be willing to share his experience. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. Right behind you. Oh, right here. Yeah, right here. That's good. See, I get to see the injury happen. Hey, Doc, keep your day job.
I think it was the catcher was the problem.
Thank God, I sat here earlier and I thought there's going to be an injury sometime before this day's over. And I said, hey, the whole room's full of doctors. It can't be that bad. So anyway, go right ahead. Your name first?
Jody Carroll.
Hi, Jody.
I'm not a physician, but I also never played one on TV. I am a libertarian talk show host.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
new to it. But I have cards I'd like to get in the hands of as many as possible because I'm with an organization called Think Freely Media. We're very small. We are nonprofit, but we have a very big goal of being a voice for you guys. We want to compete for the cultural narratives that the left, they always have false narratives. And we want to use media to compete with that using compelling stories. So I need compelling stories to put on display, not just with your patients, but the providers as well.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Are you a doctor back here? I'm not going to ask a foolish question. Is there a doctor in the house? Go ahead and toss it back. Geez. You might have to do two.
I'm going to hit someone.
It's going to be more like rugby I guess. But,
Pass it out. There.
Sorry for the recording. See, I told you I'd do that. It sounded like it's an echo there. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Nick Pandelides from York, Pennsylvania, and we have a local AM radio show hosted in the morning by a guy named Gary Sutton, who is actually excellent in our small market. And I get an opportunity to talk on his show 10 minutes every Friday morning. And we frequently talk about healthcare or other aspects where government is making things worse. The other thing that has been an opportunity is writing in the local paper, and my writing always expresses sort of my Christian worldview and my libertarian outlook, and people will ask me, don't your patients get upset? And I tell them that, I think they're self-selecting, and I'm only seeing the people that like me. But but it has been an opportunity to get the word out there, and people seem to appreciate it.
I like it. I like it very much. Thank you. Got one more over here, and then I'm going to go back to my conversation. But you got about 80 yards. I don't know. I want to do a couple throws, but we need that over here.
Is there another one?
Yeah. This should be interesting, folks. All you people in the middle might want to cover your head. Oh, yeah, another one about 2 feet closer. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Woo! Woo!
Hi, Kevin. I'm not a doctor. I'm a vice president of HR benefits for a coal company. And I think you've got the right gun, you've got the right message, maybe the wrong target. Okay? I think the money for healthcare, large, particularly private healthcare, comes from employers. And we, as the employers, are not buying the right products. We're not
and I want to thank you for the segue into the third part of my speech, so I appreciate that.
Good. So how much do you try to, and the doctors in the room, I would ask you to solicit you, how do you influence those CEOs, those CFOs, so that their HR departments are asking the right questions when they go to renew their contracts with insurance carriers?
Yeah.
We have to be smarter about how we buy.
No question about it. I agree with that. Thank you. And that literally is a segue that wasn't planned, by the way, but I appreciate that. So he's exactly right, because the people who are writing the checks are the business owners. They're the people who are, creating those relationships for their employees, and they're simply trying to do the best thing. And let me tell you, of all the things on there, the thing they like the least is healthcare. I have a small part of my life where I was working in the insurance side. By the way, I think on the good side, true insurance side, I was working in the supplemental side, which actually helps people with some of the issues that were income protection versus real directly healthcare. But we work directly with the healthcare side when we were in that. And let me tell you, man, business owners only complain. And they don't understand that there's a better way of doing it any more than your patients understand that there's a better way of doing it. And so it's going to require a level of engagement with employers that you simply haven't had before. And I think that's one of the reasons why Dr. Goyle is a member of the Houston West Chamber of Commerce. Every community you live in has a Chamber of Commerce where you could be members of and engage with those employees, with those business owners, and have conversations about how they're doing healthcare and how they can do their healthcare in such a way that really is, they got these little cliches in the healthcare industry like consumer driven. Well, they need to not only be consumer driven, they need to be economically sound, and they need to be driven with the interest of the businesses in mind that are underwriting those. Most importantly, they need to restore the relationship between the patient and the doctor. That to me is the most incredible thing to me, is the incredible damage and the near severing, if you will, between that relationship between the doctor and the patient, where the insurance company itself, I had my annual physical and they did a biopsy, and I have insurance. I hate to confess, guys, I'm in the process of transitioning. I think I'll wait until I find out how my biopsy went. But anyway, I went and had my annual physical. Doctor noticed something on my skin, so off to the dermatologist I went to. And so I said, so what's the general time frame? She wasn't particularly alarmed, but she's a professional. She's paid not to be. But she said, well, I don't know. It depends entirely on your insurance company. And I said, really? I thought I was the patient. But anyway, and that's you see, people hear that thing. They hear that statement. And I had a little bit of a banter with her about that. Oh, really? It's all depending on my insurance company. I had a little banter with her about that. And the reason why I have insurance is because it's literally given to us thanks to my wife's work, just for clarity there. But I personally don't like the fact that happened, that story happened. It just reminded me. It was like echoing in my ears after I left, that the primary one who was of interest to her, and she doesn't like it any more than I do, I guarantee you that, and she became apologetic very quickly, was the insurance company, not me. My gut tells me they could probably tell me in 72 hours how that result was. But no, they got to go through that hurdle and this hurdle and everything else. All kinds of things that go way beyond the interests of the person she was engaging with. And so that to me is the thing I find most troubling, and then, the logical end to this, the logical conclusion to where this goes is back when I was a little kid and we got a phone call from England and we heard that my grandfather died, even though he could easily have been saved, but it didn't make economic sense to do so. To whom? To whom did it not make sense? So that's where the insanity leads to. I love what was said earlier. I'll say it again. when the reality encounters the progressive fantasy, it leads always, not sometimes, always to violence. And so that's what happened with my grandfather. He was a victim of violence. He was a victim of a government system that was driven by anything other than him. You know, and to me that's just tragic. I mean, how many of you decided to become medical doctors because you wanted to become bureaucrats for the insurance industry? I mean, I'm curious. This is one question I meant to ask, and I almost forgot. I do that too. I forget stuff. Oh, you already saw that earlier. How many of you would, if you were, if you were 18 today, yeah, get all that fantasy crazy stuff out of your mind just for a minute. If you were 18 today, all of you medical doctors, how many of you would go to medical school today knowing what you know now? Quite a few. So you'd be willing to be, well, you guys are liberated, so that helps. Oh, that's a good question. This gentleman says, what about 2 years ago, how many of you would have?
2 years ago, I was telling students not to go.
See, that it went from a lot to like 2 or 3. So that's a good question. You're pretty smart. Are you a doctor? Sorry. Yeah, and he plays one on TV. Very good. So there's so many different fronts. There is that business owner that drives so much of the economics of it, who has things like profits in mind. Do you blame him? I mean, come on. I mean, that's why I went into business in the first place. You've got the patient who is really doesn't know any better, honestly. I mean, I hate to sound like they're sheeple, but they kind of are. They really don't know any better. And they think you're the authority. They really do. They weigh so much on what you say because you know so much. And so, and you've got forces out there like the media. Forget about television news. I mean, honestly, it takes such a long time. There's a few channels that will tolerate some of this discussion, but most of it is afraid and it's alien. But I'm telling you, talk radio to me seems like a logical place for you guys to begin to engage, because they are interested in liberty as a group, as a media. And of course, the blogosphere is huge. All of the websites that are out there that, that slowly but surely, those with at least right of center leanings to all the way to, I would say, libertarian views, are gaining more and more ground on the left in that space as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for engagement. I like to have a brief conversation because I really enjoy seeing that thing fly around. I like to have a conversation with a doctor who has been reluctant to have a conversation with the media or with any of the other people I've used as example that you need to engage with. Business owners, patients. Come on, fess up. We want to know why, because I'd like to know why, if for no other reason, to see what the sentiment, or if you want to talk about your friend. Oh, wait, we got one here. I don't have to even do any coercion. Okay, so wherever that microphone box, I see one over there. Oh, one over here. But it's so much more fun when they go 80 yards. You never know they're going to get a first down. Okay, go ahead. And your name first.
Sharif Kitab, I'm a plastic surgeon from Los Angeles.
Thank you.
And that says it all. Okay?
Here you go.
I have no less than 50 physicians that have given me their prices with one promise, that I never show their name on my website.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Any other ones? I'd like to get a couple more perspectives on this. Yeah, right over here. I think there's a closer one right there. So why don't that table... You were dying to throw it anyway. Come on. There we go. That's fun.
I live in this city. We have 3 stations that are ABC, NBC, and CBS affiliates. And there's 20, we have a Fox channel, I think, too, and PBS. I don't think that people who watch television, let's rephrase that. I don't think television is the right medium, which is what I think about for media. I think if it, they talk about who got raped and who got killed and who got jacked. So I don't think there's a place on local TV for that conversation. I hear you about the talk show, and that's fine. I actually tried to do that about 15 years ago, but it never went anywhere, and nobody's fault. I think
I certainly wasn't mine. I never seen you before today.
I don't think, I think you need to qualify media to that conversation. I would rather put articles in the paper. Plus, I'm sure a lot of these guys and girls don't want their name anywhere because they don't want to be seen as bragging about this.
Sure.
I'm happy here. I don't want any more patients. I'm a mature practice. If I never see another new patient, I'm happy. Whereas I know some guys are fighting I want new patients, and I get it.
Yeah, well, could you send some of your extra patients to some of these other guys? So there, okay, and we have one more over here. Right here? I'm sorry, we gotta get whatever that thing is, flying mic to you. Watch out, chandelier.
Hi, I'm
Oh, wait, we got one, yeah.
Oh, Amy Meckley, Family Medicine from Cincinnati, Ohio. What I have found, and persistence always wins, but getting into CEOs, CFOs, and HR as a physician, they don't take meetings typically from physicians. So it is a very odd relationship at times. I have been in front of 8 CEOs at a time, got into the YPO kind of groups. That was very good because I was trying to figure out DPC-wise, is this something that has a value proposition that our market, our region is ready for? By the end of these meetings, I'm speaking to them about supply chain. I'm speaking to them in their language. They really, sitting back thinking, wow, you don't sound like a doctor. I'm like, because I understand the economics of it. At the end of the meetings, though, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
So it's an interdisciplinary approach that I think is critical, which is why I think this meeting is so important, because it's our TPAs and our brokers that have the relationships with the CFOs, CHOs, the CEOs and the HR. They can come up with a product or even a communication slick that feels and looks similar to what they're used to, but underlying is a whole different scenario that we then develop and deliver. So I think the media is good, and I have been on some talk shows and things like that, and it helps get a buzz. But the purchasers, to the person, and I apologize, we've already talked, the gentleman with the coal, the purchasers and the burning platform is with the employers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that just leveraging that relationship and understanding that, I think, is critical.
Yeah, let's give her a hand. So the engagement, though, see, the employers can usually care less. And so that's why if we can get employees to talk about it, I believe a groundswell of support is crucial. But I agree with you. Ultimately, I find it kind of funny that you find it odd that CEOs don't want to meet with a doctor. I mean, come on, really? Who wants to meet their doctor? I mean, sorry.
They think
okay,
it's kind of fun. But then the other thing I just want to mention, too, beyond that, once we get patients in the door, we're done.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
It's experiential. Once you experience it, you won't want to go back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this initial phase, I think, is going to be really important.
Dr. Smith.
Well, I've had some interaction with the media, so
just a little,
very little.
I'll let you in on a secret. The reason that the media, in spite of this message, loves, I think at times, to talk to me is not so much what I've said, but it's the style. My goal has always been to be extremely provocative, but with a smile on my face. And the king of that, the guy who did that better than anybody, is a fellow named Murray Rothbard.
Yes.
So Rothbard had these razor blades and grenades coming out of his mouth with this just gigantic grin on his face, and everybody loved him. There wasn't anybody that didn't like Rothbard except maybe that idiot William Buckley. So the trick that I found, and I look back at some of the interviews that I've done, and I see John Stossel laughing, and I hear Lou Rockwell laughing, and some of this stuff, if you can figure out a way to wrap it with a good news sort of wrap and make it a positive message, because this is all good news. I mean, the free market is about mutually beneficial exchange. There aren't any losers, except the bad guys, except the guys that need to be put out of business. So this is a really good news message. Everybody ought to have a smile on their face when these interviews are going on. They ought to be laughing, frankly, because it really is the way to go. Now, you quoted Mises' third way. And actually, somebody said, there's got to be another way other than socialism and capitalism. Isn't there a third way? And Mises said, yes, and it leads directly to the third world.
That's exactly right.
And that's the kind of humor, even though it's morbid, and it's just hilarious. I mean, when you think about it, when Mises was looking at a site in China where there were 10,000 guys building a dam, and the Chinese apparatchik said, in China, this is how we create jobs. And Mises said, if you want to create jobs, take their shovels away. I thought you were trying to build a dam. It's that kind of humor that applies to this message. And the more you read and the more you know, I mean, there is actually humor in this. And when you see the bad guys in a humorous way and you can make fun of them with a smile on your face and without bitterness, everybody will listen. And it's a much more sellable idea with the media, I think.
I think so. And I encourage, let's give him a hand too, by the way. There's a great, don't throw it at me, there's a great video, by the way, of Rothbard talking about housing projects. It's hilarious. Everyone should see that at some time. And also, I wanted to mention something that was stated earlier, and it was way too many names ago now already, but I like the idea, like third-party administrators. I know they're here as well. Those people tactically are on the front end of dealing with business owners, and they are people that really can change the way business owners view things. And there's tons of third-party administrators that are not in this room. None. I mean, lots, rather. And so I think they're another excellent people to engage with. Okay, make it short because I want to move into some general questions here at the end. And my understanding is I run out of time in 6 minutes.
So Kevin, I just have one other comment. It's kind of a golden nugget because of the doctors in the room, because of my greatest advocate that I employed to help change the culture in the company was a physician who became the trusted advisor of our senior officers, the CEO, the CFO, and that trusted physician with those senior officers really made the culture change and the understanding of the free market and allowed us to do what we've been doing. Yeah. So there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we need to throw one back there. We are now in the general question phase of this thing, whatever we want to call it. Oh, wow. Ooh. Is there a doctor in the house? Oh. That was scary. Kind of exciting, though.
That was Monty Python, a mere flesh wound. So I'm a broker, but I'm not a troll.
Yeah, notice how close he is to the door, though. Notice that.
I love that you're going out and talking to the C-suite. In fact, I've taken Dr. Smith on a couple of visitations, and I just shut up and I just smile. It's great. But self-funding is really the way to go about to have employers reduce their healthcare costs. In my shoes, I'm dealing with HR, the C-suite, and unfortunately, regardless of the size of the company, there are some HR professionals that want to have their head in the sand and don't bother me, I want to take my kids to Disney World, but that's not everyone. Then you've got the HR professionals that want to make a difference. They get ROI and EBITDA and such. Everyone here in this room is non-status quo, and you're all my partners, basically. And the way to affect change is not to do the PPO. It's basically profit-making cartels for the insurance company. PPOs are cost drivers. So anytime a physician says, I want to go visit with the C-suite, I'm like, let's go. Okay, that needs to happen. To continue doing the same thing over and over again is a true definition of insanity. And I'm amazed when I talk to an employer that has 1,200 employees and they're fully insured, and they say, why do my costs keep going up 25, 30% every year? And I go back to knocking on the forehead, saying, McFly, you're doing the wrong thing. We see on my side of the fence agents, brokers that will say, oh, self-funding, it's too risky. You know, you're going to go bankrupt and such, and that aggravates the heck out of me. So regardless of your size, Dr. Smith, how many employees do you have at your facility? 39. And has self-funding been a good thing for you or a bad thing? Positive. 39 people. I just did an audit for a company that has 1,600 employees, and their broker was telling them that they're too small to be self-funded. Yeah. So I'm fighting battles like that every day. They're not my client yet, But
No, what they meant is their commission check is too small for them to be self-funded.
bingo, commissions and overrides, okay?
Okay, so did you have a question?
No, I just want to make a statement that I
you're
applaud
doing
you
a
for
dang
going
good
out and
job.
talking to people. But I am different. I'm not the status quo. There's others like me
Yeah.
that are doing the same thing. And so understand there is hope out there. But I commend you for going out and talking to the C-suite. That's needed. And companies need to know that everyone here is part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
And we're going to get this thing done. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
you.
Any other actual questions? Questions? Right there.
It's close enough for a handoff.
Yeah.
Todd Bartos, I'm we're going the crazy route because we're starting a brand new healthcare system in Pennsylvania, really based on a lot of what's being discussed here. One of the questions I had, though, completely on the political side and with the media, is we know with the debates and with the political ads that the heartstrings are going to get pulled, that there's going to be the sob stories, the medical bankruptcies, the people who can't afford it, even with the ACA. Can you give us like sort of a good soundbite, a good nugget that we can use at cocktail parties, at other discussions, that's just a punch them back in the face kind of statement?
Yeah, I would say let's have conversations with people about veterans. Because ultimately that's what they're evolving towards, is more and more government control, more and more healthcare that harms the relationship between the doctor and the patient. And so how is that working for veterans? How's it helping that we went from, how many was it, like 7 or 8 major healthcare companies that were originally involved to like 3 or 4 now, and they're falling off? How is it helping you? Do you want to have 2 choices for cars? Do you want 2 choices for any item in your life? Well, that's what's happening now because of how this is driving. I think really, if you want to, you can talk about my granddad. He's been dead for years, but I think it's a great story still. There's so many more stories that support our side versus that side, I think. I'm absolutely convinced of that. All right, time is up according to this. Maybe this is a different time zone. No, it's time is up. Thanks so much. I'll be hanging around. I'd love to talk to y'all. Good to see y'all.